The council chamber fell silent as Kevin stepped forward, the weight of 1,000 stairs pressing against his shoulders. In his hands, wrapped carefully in ceremonial cloth, rested the blade of Ashkara, a weapon that had not been touched by outsider hands in 3,000 cycles. He shouldn't have been there at all. "Honored Queen," Kevin began, his voice steady despite the trembling in his legs. "I come to return what was lost." Queen Zephyra of the Valthene Empire sat upon her crystalline throne, her 6 eyes narrowing in synchronized displeasure. Her skin shimmered with the violet hue of barely contained rage, and the temperature in the chamber dropped several degrees. Around her, 24 elite guards, each standing nearly 8 feet tall, tightened their grips on plasma lances. "A human," she hissed, the translator barely keeping up with the venom in her words. "You dare enter our sacred hall? You dare touch the Ashkara?" Kevin had heard the warnings. Every human in the diplomatic corps had been briefed. Never approach Valthene royalty uninvited, never speak of their ancient wars, and absolutely never touch their ceremonial weapons. But when he'd found the sword half buried in the wreckage of the crashed shuttle, when he'd seen the royal crest etched into its blade, he'd known what he had to do. "I meant no disrespect, Your Majesty," he said, carefully unwrapping the cloth. The shuttle crash scattered debris across Sector 7. This was recovered by our salvage team. You thought? The Queen rose from her throne, her elaborate robes trailing behind her like liquid mercury. "You thought a primitive species barely 2 centuries into space travel could comprehend the significance of what you hold." The guards advanced, forming a semicircle around Kevin. He could see Hyal at the edge of the chamber, her hand hovering near her sidearm. She'd warned him this was a terrible idea. As the human ambassador's security chief, she'd outlined 17 different scenarios where this encounter ended with him in a Valthene prison, or worse. But Kevin hadn't listened. He never did when he thought he was doing the right thing. "Please," he said, extending the sword toward the Queen. "Just take it back. I only wanted to—" The moment his bare hand touched the exposed hilt, the world exploded in blue fire. Kevin screamed as ancient symbols blazed to life along the blade, racing up his arm in branching patterns of light. The pain was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Not burning, but something deeper, as if the weapon was rewriting him at a molecular level. "Impossible." The Queen's voice cracked with something that might have been fear. The guards froze mid-step, their weapons clattering to the polished floor. Several dropped to their knees, their translator unit struggling to process their panicked chittering. Hyal burst through the line of stunned warriors, her weapon drawn but useless against whatever was happening. "Kevin, drop it." I can't." The symbols had reached his shoulder now, burning themselves into his skin like living tattoos. Through the agony, Kevin could feel something else, a presence ancient and vast, testing him, measuring him. The Queen descended from her throne, moving with a speed that belied her ceremonial bearing. She grabbed Kevin's wrist, her 6 eyes wide with an emotion the translator rendered as horrified awe. "The Ashkara judges all who touch it," she whispered. "For 3,000 cycles it has burned every hand that dared grasp it, Valthene, Krokan, even the ancient predecessors. It has never accepted a bearer." The blue fire reached Kevin's chest, and suddenly the pain stopped. The symbols settled into his skin, glowing faintly, and the sword itself seemed to hum with satisfaction. In his mind, Kevin heard a voice, no words but understanding nonetheless. The blade had been waiting, not for a Valthene, not for any of the great warrior races that had tried to claim it. It had been waiting for someone who would return it when they could have kept it. Kevin looked down at the weapon in his hand, now bonded to him in a way he couldn't comprehend. "I don't understand. I just wanted to give it back." The Queen released his wrist and stepped back, her expression unreadable. Around them, her guards remained on their knees, their heads bowed in what Kevin suddenly recognized as submission. "That is precisely why it chose you, human." The Queen's voice had lost its edge of contempt, replaced by something almost like reverence. "The Ashkara is not a weapon of conquest. It is a weapon of honor, forged by the predecessors to be wielded only by one who values duty over glory, service over power." She looked at her guards, then back at Kevin. "In 3,000 cycles, across 100 wars and 1,000 champions, no Valthene has been deemed worthy, and now a human A species we dismissed as barely civilized holds what we could not. Hayal lowered her weapon, her tactical mind clearly racing through the implications. So what happens now? The queen was silent for a long moment, her 6 eyes studying Kivan with new intensity. Now, Kivan of Earth, you carry a burden that has broken empires. The Ashkara will serve you as it has served none before. And we— She gestured to her kneeling guards, to the assembled court. We must reconsider everything we thought we knew about humanity. Kivan looked at the glowing marks on his arm, at the ancient sword that now pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He'd come here to return a lost artifact and maintain diplomatic relations. Instead, he'd apparently become something the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia. I still just wanted to give it back, he muttered. Hayal moved to his side, her eyes scanning for threats out of habit. Well, she said dryly, I think you're going to need a bigger return receipt. Despite everything, the pain, the fear, the weight of ancient expectations now settling on his shoulders, Kivan laughed. It was a very human sound in the alien chamber, and somehow it felt exactly right. The Ashkara hummed its approval, and across the galaxy, the Valthian Empire began to understand what humans had known all along. Sometimes, the greatest strength wasn't in taking what you could hold, but in returning what was never yours to keep.